Raheem here. Welcome. Let's slay some demons. Brief message. God and MAGOG, America and Britain, on a collision course with Iran and China.
She ain't sitting there anymore.
They got her out.
That's what happens.
Hey, while we're on the topic of China, there's a big deal that has happened this week between China and Iran.
Yes, the Chinese attended a state visit to Tehran. This is the foreign minister of China on the left and Rouhani, the supreme leader of Iran on the right. The meeting resulted in a $400 billion agreement. Now, it's going to span 25 years. China gets oil. Iran gets everything else. I'm talking about military cooperation, intelligence sharing, technology agreements, agricultural arrangements. China is looking for a guaranteed supplier of oil, and they found it.
I thought we were going all electric. Did China not get the memo that we're going all electric?
And they have to do something about global warming.
Don't they know that?
Continue to run the factories is what they said.
They're going to keep running the factories, and they're going to keep burning the fuel. So they've got a sweetheart deal with Iran. Iran is going to sell oil to China for the next 25 years.
25 years.
At a steep discount. And in return, Iran gets a lot of perks from China, including military and intelligence cooperation.
What about uranium? I mean, China has the nukes. Maybe they put a couple of those over there.
Well, Matt, that's a good point about the nukes, because you think about it. So you have an agreement with a country that they have to supply oil that's produced in their own country. Then they're probably going to make sure that country doesn't get blown up.
That's a good step.
This has Israel very, very worried, because it may also infer that China has now put a military protection over the territorial integrity of Iran.
Yeah, let's look at number 6. Ex-IDF Intel chief. Iran-China megadeal includes worrying military info sharing. So we're seeing now, Edward, an Iranian-China military and economic alliance come together this week.
The counter eyes. The same way we have our Five Eyes alliance here in the West. The Chinese seem to be forming their own version of this. And what's important with this is that the meeting there, you see the foreign minister of Iran, Javad Zarif, and the foreign minister of China, Minister Wang Yi. Their meeting was specifically related to strategic relations. And what came out of this, the Chinese actually said they will protect the sovereignty of Iran. Translated, that means they're going to make sure Iran doesn't get deposed, blown up, fall into a civil war like Syria.
Okay, so if they go into a full-blown military pact, like a NATO type of pact, and China promises to militarily protect Iran. If Iran is attacked by Israel and the United States, China would be obligated to attack the United States and Israel.
They got to protect their $400 million investment. I mean, what's next? Venezuela? How far does this go? I mean, they have oil. They need that oil too. This is very dangerous. I mean, this is a line drawn for me. It looks like they're saying, what happened to those sanctions on Iran?
They're still there, but the Biden administration has now discussed easing them. Because again, this could lead, obviously, to confrontation with China.
Would this deal have been made with Trump in office?
No. Never. You're talking about the China deal?
Would they have?
Yes.
You think so?
Yes. Absolutely.
That would have pushed what? Further sanctions? Trump wouldn't just stand idly by with this.
Yeah, but obviously it would become a lot more intense between the United States and China. But
China has no
China
fear.
is flexing its muscles.
Yeah.
It's not going to be pushed around
Yeah.
by the United States, Europe, NATO, New World Order boys. They're not going to tolerate it anymore. And the U.S. and Europe, we've driven countries into the arms of China.
There's no doubt.
Okay? So why is Iran our enemy? For one word, Israel.
Yes.
That's the only reason Iran is an enemy of the United States. The United States declares Iran to be an enemy nation because Israel says it's an enemy nation. Why can't the United States and Iran get along together?
Yes.
Because Israel wants a war.
And irony of this situation is that wasn't it Israel that provided missile technology to the Iranians in the late 60s? We've spoken about this in the past. They complained about the nuclear weapons program of the extreme regime in Iran, yet its beginnings are in the technology Israel provided them.
Well, they've always been double dealing. Israel is always double dealing. There's a long history of it. Jerusalem Post, how U.S. tensions with Russia and China could impact Israel. Edward, there's a quote in this article.
Yes, so they're very clear that they're paying attention to what's happening right now on the geopolitical level and how it impacts Israel. They said Israel wants a positive relationship with Moscow and Beijing, not an adversarial one. It also wants to make sure that its strategic and defense partnerships with the U.S., which increasingly means defense ties on numerous levels, remains intact as Washington ups the rhetoric with China. It added, like all changes in power, there could be a peaceful transition, such as when Britain ceased to be a global empire in the 1960s. Or there could be a major confrontation. Israel will find itself in the middle if it isn't careful.
And which side will Israel choose if it has to choose between China and the United States?
Who did they give the contracts for the port of Haifa to?
To China. Israel will choose the side that is most beneficial to Israel.
Yes.
It could be the United States, but it could be China. They will make a pragmatic decision which side is going to win, China or the United States. And Israel will go with the one that benefits Israel the most. And all this talk of the Israel-United States alliance, it'll go out the window in a heartbeat. They will betray the United States in a heartbeat if China promises more to Israel than the United States has delivered. And now, China becoming the protector of Iran, Israel's got to get on China's good side. This changes the whole Middle East. So who's distributing COVID vaccines in Palestine this week? China.
Yeah, the Russians also attempted to engage in COVID diplomacy. They were also trying to provide the vaccines, not the United States. And I think it's clear that both Russia and China see momentum here.
Mm-hmm.
The United States is distracted. We're distracted in part due to a virus, a terroristic act that many have attributed to China. We're distracted, and the Middle East is up for grabs.
Yes, and Netanyahu, the election was held last week. He did not win a majority. Once again, Israel is in deadlock. They can't form a government. At some point, Netanyahu's got to go. They just got to tell him, get lost, get out of here. But he's hanging on because he's got a criminal prosecution against him.
Well, I think it's interesting with the election, Rick, because one of the arguments Israel made for intervention in Syria was that there was no government there, that the territory was in chaos, that there was turmoil, the people weren't being listened to. Isn't Israel starting to look a lot like Syria? They can't form a government. How can they claim to be the predominant democratic state in the Middle East? They can't successfully carry out an election.
They can't. They're highly divided. And you got leftist Jews and far right, I call them right, it's called far Zionist Jews, who are the radical settlers who want to go ahead and take over all the other Palestinian land.
The warmongers.
They can't come together. And so we're now at the fourth election, and they still can't form a government. And I don't know where this is going to go. The people obviously don't like any of the politicians, and they haven't ratified any of them. There is a war game taking place.
Yes, a classified one, although CNN seems to have heard about it. It's being led by the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley, and the defense secretary, being run out of NORAD, and specifically, it is war gaming what a conflict breaking out in the Arctic would look like for America.
General Milley
personally leading it.
And the new Secretary of Defense are
Yes,
running this war game?
They're personally leading it, personally taking on the side of the U.S., the response. This drill is so secretive that CNN actually has some quotes about it inside. In part, they are concerned about the concentration of both Russia and China on the Arctic, and not just for military development, but for trade. It's odd to think in an era where you're dealing with a frozen, basically region, you'd have ships going through that area. But experts in trade throughout the world believe that is going to be one of the new trade routes that's opened up through technology, icebreakers and such.
So we all forget that just about less than a month ago, we were told by the news media that the Biden administration was going to carry out cyber attacks against Russia within the next 3 weeks. So those 3 weeks are over.
You have to wonder if those cyber attacks, the Russians maybe didn't report on it out of embarrassment. Maybe don't know how many things were hacked.
Or is this big talk?
Or it was big talk, but it was promised. And what we are now seeing,
Or it was
a lot
repelled.
That too.
It's possibly they repelled it.
And the United States has stayed quiet, because we've also not announced our massive cyber victories. But what is true, there's been some very odd developments when it comes to our strategic command and our national security. Over the weekend, Rick, actually at 7:50 p.m. on Sunday, U.S. Strategic Command posted what the Sun called a very bizarre tweet. And in part, they put up a tweet, as you see on the screen there, with some symbols, some odd letters. Doesn't seem to be any kind of statement.
That's one of my passwords.
Well, some thought this might be nuclear codes. It was quite a speculation until the U.S. Strategic Command said, "Oh, we made a mistake."
Or someone's kid got on their phone and
That's my password to my Wawa app.
Jeez. But it's odd. Again, this is the verified account of the U.S. Strategic Command in charge of our nuclear deterrence at the time that General Milley is running a secret drill in the Northwest. You have to wonder if this might have been tied. Well, while this was happening, Rick.
I want to think this. You're telling me the U.S. Strategic Command, they run the nuclear weapons, right?
Yes.
There's nothing higher when it comes to nuclear weapons in the United States.
The command for
That is.
That's it.
Okay. And they tweeted. Why does the U.S. Strategic Command have a Twitter account?
That's a great question, Rick. Maybe they want to announce
Is there anything about that?
I
the
don't know the
barbecue.
reason for it.
I would propose that this may have actually been part of the drill. Something interesting about Twitter.
But why would you tweet it?
Maybe you wanted to see how the public would react. You get a real-time reaction. You see the spread. See how many people report on it.
Yeah.
If you wanted to know if your message during launches, during, let's say, the outset of nuclear war, will actually proliferate throughout the country, why not make it part of the drill? And then just say afterward, well, it was just a mistake. You don't even have to scapegoat anybody at this point, because it's a Twitter account.
But seriously, we're texting secret messages during a nuclear war by Twitter?
In this scenario, it sounds nuts,
Really?
but hey, what isn't nuts during 2021?
Well,
It's already been a
what
crazy
if-
year.
What, Strategic Command gets deplatformed?
Well, then again, we'd have to blame that on the Chinese and Russians, right? Those
Well,
frauds.
no, Jack Dorsey could deplatform the U.S.
That's true.
Strategic Command.
Yeah, he's done it to the sitting president of the United States.
All right, so that's kind of weird, but the next story is not weird. It's pretty sobering and frightening.
Yes.
The display of Russian military might.
For the first time
Yes.
in recorded history, the Russians have surfaced with 3 nuclear submarines near the North Pole. And it's part of their own version of a doomsday drill.
You seen this,
Yeah,
man?
I saw it over the weekend. I think I texted you guys about
Imagine
this.
being a
But what about
nice
the drone flying
fish
over?
farmer.
Where who's filming using the drone there? Because this is some amazing footage. But he's
This is
breaking
real. This
the
just
ice.
happened.
Yeah,
They released this on Friday, just as the U.S. started their secret
classified
drill.
drill.
this has always
Don't
been.
leak to
You know,
CNN.
Russia's always had some. You know, wanting to either capture, domesticate, do something up in the northern pole. We always see these stories every once in a while.
Do you know the short distance from that point to the United States of America?
Yeah, they're showing
Nuclear
them.
armed submarines.
They're showing that they
That's a
can
good
hit
point.
any target.
Wow.
in
Not
the
that they
United
need
States.
they're not planning to build a hotel there.
Yeah.
They're launching nukes.
Well, I do know they want to put bases up there.
Yeah, but they're launching nukes. That's what this is all about. That's to show the United. That was to demonstrate to General Milley Hey, we're going to bring our nuclear armed subs up out of the water,
And
out
if
of
the
the
United
ice.
States
We're going to
didn't
bring them
know
up
they were
out of
there.
the ice.
Think about this. They probably were telling, we got them there undetected.
Mm.
You didn't even know.
Yes. Now that's what I believe happened. The U.S. was doing its secret exercise for war with Russia and China, and the Russians decided, let's join the drill and show them where we're at right now. And I have a feeling that there was probably some military leaders who had to go wear adult diapers.
Maybe that was the you know when you type in something and you're saying a curse word and using all those. Maybe that's what
That's
the
the tweet. That's the tweet.
That makes a lot of sense.
So you send an exam.
Oh no.
Well, that was clearly the Russian response. The Chinese, they've been a little more nuanced in what they're doing. The Chinese, Rick, have been pretty obsessed in the past couple of years on building something called a Polar Silk Road. Now, they have been pre-positioning satellites and other military assets in the region, but they're very concentrated with building a Polar Silk Road. Now, this phrase, we actually mentioned this before. It was when the Biden administration was first organizing the talks, which have now happened with China in Alaska and Anchorage. And this had come up, that the Chinese are obsessed with building a Shangri-La in Alaska. Now, why this is important is there was some pretty big developments. We didn't get to cover it on Friday, but the Suez Canal got blocked. It got unblocked today. A lot of people in Egypt are very happy about this because about 300 ships got blocked. But this isn't the first time that Suez Canal has come up. When the Chinese first announced their bid to build a Polar Silk Road, one that could supplant every trade route in the world, Xi Jinping talked about the Suez Canal. Now, what he said, this is a 2018 speech, this is Reuters, China unveils vision for Polar Silk Road across Arctic. It said that shipping through the Northern Sea Route, this is what the Polar Silk Road is, would shave almost 20 days off the regular time using the traditional route through the Suez Canal. Now, the China's Polar Silk Road, you can see in this map, there's really only 3 routes in the world. You can take the Polar Silk Road, it's the red one, the overland route, which is the new Silk Road being built by China, and then there's the maritime route, which is actually going through the Suez. What did we just experience? We just experienced the first shock in the last, I think, century of what would happen if the Suez Canal closed. It's not just your toilet paper, folks. Your biochemical materials, your food, your military assets. The Suez Canal is shut down, even with a ship going sideways in the canal. You can see the West crippled from even able to respond to conflict past the Mediterranean.
The only one open would be that Arctic Silk Road, huh?
Controlled by China.
And we still don't know who the identity of the ship's captain.
No, and we did hear on Friday from a port official that he was actually the head of the port official in Suez Canal, that there were 2 officials from the Suez Canal Authority on board when he made that fatal decision, partly influenced by wind reportedly, to block the canal. You have to wonder, because he did come from China, Rick. That's where he was coming from before he entered the canal.
Hey, China has also been flexing its muscles around Taiwan.
Yes, and this is very important because Taiwan is the other route for 2/3 of trade in the world. Taiwan has reported the largest ever incursion of Chinese air forces, about 20 warplanes, entered just south of Taiwan. They passed through what's called the Bashi Channel. This is where 2/3 of shipping containers, shipping vessels travel every single day to supply the world with our tchotchkes and our necessary supplies.
Each incursion is a greater number of Chinese warplanes.
That's true.
South China Morning Post in Hong Kong had a report about a Chinese army sniper video sending a warning shot to any destabilizing forces in Hong Kong.
What was important about this is the forces the Chinese had previously deployed to Hong Kong were mainly police battalions. They've now deployed sniper units.
For the city.
Yes, what do you use a sniper unit for?
You shoot people in the head.
How big
Yes.
those bullets are.
That isn't pepper bullets, that's not pepper spray, that's not flares.
Are those 50 cals? What
It's
is
their
it?
version of it.
Oh.
And to really to rub it in the Americans' eyes, they're making a big deal about their use of female snipers. They're claiming to be a more diverse, lethal force than the Americans. Their female sniper corps, which the Russians used female snipers.
Okay, but
in World War II.
Edward, why is China putting male or female snipers in the city of Hong Kong?
To shoot people they say are working for the Americans, working for foreign powers.
Hong
to take over
Kong's
their
not
territory.
a battleground. It's not a. It's
For them, it is. I mean, they squashed that Hong Kong uprising real quick. You know,
that's showing you, Matt,
Oh,
how serious they are. They're letting everybody in Hong Kong know from now on, if you challenge the China Communist Party, we're going to blow your head off.
yeah, that's how it is. That's how 1 million people control billions of people, by brute force, internment camps, re-education camps.
Well,
This is China style.
It is the Communist Party way. Past snipers, the Chinese have a far bigger plot afoot. They want to invade Taiwan. And this isn't a conspiracy theory anymore, or something wildly stated by a State Department official. The Chinese government has actively run drills to do it. And one of our top admirals, the admiral who is looking to take over the region, be our top general in charge of this Indo-Pacific, he has said now that the invasion of Taiwan is closer than most think.
What would we do? What would we do as a
That's why we're having a top secret war drill this week.
If they went in next week and said, we're going to take over Taiwan, what are you going to do? What do you think our response would be?
Under Biden, I don't think it'll be anything.
Zero. I would think zero. And we diplomatically tried to do something and blah, blah, blah.
But the moment that happens, the world knows the United States is no longer the top military force in the world.
Isn't that where we're at right now?
Yes.
But that's one invasion.
But we have transvestites in the government. We have all kinds of sexual perversion in this
We sell
country,
Satan
but
like-
we're losing our military strength, and it's because God is whittling down the strength, the power, the prestige of America, because this nation has embraced debauchery and perversion and sin at a level the world has not seen since Sodom and Gomorrah. That's a fact. That's a fact. That's where we're at right now. That's why everybody should have their life in order.
Yeah.
You are not guaranteed, we as a nation, we're not guaranteed another 24 hours based on world history. America has crossed the line a long time ago. We're not guaranteed another 24 hours. I know people go, well, what about all the Christians in the country? Well, if they're killed in a nuclear war, they'll instantly be in the presence of the Lord.
Yeah. There's more Christians, I think, by number in China.
Yes.
So,
But God's not going to.
this is not a Christian nation, and God's going to keep, because we don't act like it. We outlaw Dr. Seuss and promote Satan shoes. I mean, this is where we're at in America.
Yes, with human blood in it.
So,
The drill that U.S. Strategic Command is running at the discretion of General Milley is really wargaming what would happen if a war broke out with China and Russia. And Rick, we haven't talked about the region for some time, but it does appear that the kind of standoff in Ukraine is starting to heat up again. There has been reports in the Donbass, which is the east region of Ukraine, that there's a troop buildup. There's also now you've got the U.S. Think tank groups who work for Politico. They're floating that of what would happen if Putin launched another invasion. Well, the truth is, Rick, that the Ukrainians have actually passed a resolution to take back the Crimea. Now, this was lost in 2014, but the Ukrainians want it back, Rick. They put troops at the ready, and they've actually put out a plan. This is their foreign minister about 2 weeks ago now, said not only is the reintegration of the Crimea a necessity, but we have God on our side. We have state approval. And we are going to return ourselves to Crimea. Rick, the Russians are not going to leave.
no. If Ukraine thinks it's going to take Crimea from Russia, they are smoking weed. Russia is not going to surrender Crimea. Vladimir Putin said a week or two ago, it is our holy land. He said, Russia got the gospel from Crimea. They're not going to let go of it. And there will be a horrendous war if Ukraine, prodded by NATO. Ukraine's not going to do it on their own. They're only going to do it if they're prodded by NATO. If NATO wants the war with Russia and China to start, they'll prod them. If not, nothing's going to happen. Hey, Edward, I know we only got a few minutes, but I really think we ought to talk about COVID.
Yes, and you mentioned something on Friday, Rick, a statement by Pastor Bob Jeffress.
Mm-hmm.
It was troubling, so troubling we could try to summarize and do it justice. I almost fell on my seat hearing it again on Saturday. Pastor Jeffress was recently on Fox Business, and Rick, he compared the use of vaccines that have been produced through aborted cell lines, murdered children, to the crucifixion of Jesus Christ.
And said, Jesus was innocent, he died so that people could be saved. So these aborted babies, they died so that people could be healed from COVID.
Last.
He really said it, folks. And I was stunned when I saw it and heard it and couldn't believe it came out of the mouth of a conservative, religious right Baptist preacher. But I've given up on all of them. You need to see it yourself. This is Robert Jeffress endorsing the use of aborted baby stem cells to produce vaccines.
Black aborted babies.
I want to discourage anybody from taking the vaccines because we've got to stop this pandemic. But there is concern among some Catholic bishops and some evangelicals as well that the cell lines that were used to develop certain vaccines, particularly Johnson & Johnson, came from aborted feces. Came from aborted babies. Let's just say it out loud. So what exactly is your answer to that? I mean, there are people that don't want any connection there with abortion and vaccines.
Well, look, first of all, we would never abort babies to provide a vaccine. I think Francis Collins has denied that linkage, and he is a strong Christian himself. But David, if we're talking about something from babies that were already aborted, I would just remind people the whole Christian message is that Christ, who was innocent, died for us and brought something good out of that unjust death. And I think if lives can be saved, even from the unrighteous killing of a baby, that there's something to be gained there. So I would not refuse the vaccine on that point alone.
That is not the Christian message.
Every Christian should condemn Robert Jeffress. He crossed the line.
You all crossed the line 500 years ago.
He has totally become irrelevant. It is so sad that I'm watching Christian leaders in this country like Robert Jeffress, T.D. Jakes, Franklin Graham, and they are becoming irrelevant.
They're falling away.
They've become irrelevant, and it's sad to see somebody like Robert Jeffress that in his closing days of his ministry, that he has backslidden to such a point that he is endorsing using stem cells from aborted babies, and I don't care what he said.
Aborted babies.
Well, they came from babies that were aborted earlier, and so if it turns out that this did something good,
You're saying they're going to be aborted anyway. We might as well just use the babies if they've been aborted.
It's like, sad to see T.D. Jakes, Franklin Graham, and Robert Jeffress finish their careers as deep state prostitutes. Because that's what they are now. Franklin Graham, T.D. Jakes, and Robert Jeffress are deep state prostitutes and will now say anything for whatever purpose, whether it's, I don't know if it's monetary gain, I don't know what it is that's motivating these men. But I've lost all respect for them.
You cannot justify in any means using aborted fetuses. I mean, he's trying to justify it in some way. You can't. That is a human being that was killed, and he's saying it's okay because it was going to be killed anyway.
He's making.
He said it was killed. They already killed those babies, so let's go ahead and use them.
Yeah.
He's making the greater good argument. This is the same argument that eugenicists make.
Yes.
Population control, nutbags, they make this argument.
Listen closely to what he said. He said, I wouldn't support aborting babies to make vaccines, but since the baby's already been aborted, I don't have a problem with it. And then he compares it to the sacrifice of Christ.
Well, that's the way to make you feel
That's
like it's
blasphemy.
okay. Oh, 100%.
It's blasphemy.
All right, wait till you hear this next one, Edward and Matt. This came out today. The director of the CDC, Rochelle Walensky, said today that she is scared of the impending doom. Oh my. The chief of the Centers for Disease Control says she's scared. There's an impending doom coming to America. You talk about some fear-mongering. Listen to what she said.
I'm going to pause here. I'm going to lose the script, and I'm going to reflect on the recurring feeling I have of impending doom. We have so much to look forward to, so much promise and potential of where we are, and so much reason for hope. But right now, I'm scared. I know what it's like as a physician to stand in that patient room, gowned, gloved, masked, shielded, and to be the last person to touch someone else's loved one because their loved one couldn't be there. I know what it's like when you're the physician, when you're the healthcare provider, and you're worried that you don't have the resources to take care of the patients in front of you. I know that feeling of nausea when you read the crisis standards of care and you wonder whether there are going to be enough ventilators to go around and who's going to make that choice. And I know what it's like to pull up to your hospital every day and see the extra morgue sitting outside.
Well, ventilator
The doom seems to be coming from her mouth because, again, the morgues being overrun. Did you see that?
No,
I didn't see any of this death she's talking about.
Maybe she knows that the mass vaccination campaign is going to produce the impending doom that the Dutch doctor said the world was going to experience.
Yes, Gert van den Bosch said, and again, he worked for Bill and Melinda Gates, worked at Gavi. He said that the mass vaccination using these experimental vaccines is going to cause a vaccine wave. That's the new wave. New infections, new death, all mine with a bioweapon.
He said the destruction of a significant portion of the Earth's population. Yeah, that's impending doom. So are they vaccinating people knowing that it's going to lead to mass death?
I've been having this debate and talking to people around you guys. What is the push for? Why? It's not a vaccine. It does not vaccinate this. They still tell you can't travel when you have the vaccine. It's not a vaccine, but they're pushing it on
you still have to wear a mask.
Yes.
You can still.
So what's it doing?
Infected.
It's a loyalty pledge. It's a badge of submission.
Yeah, but it's in your body. It's doing something. There's some reason. There's something else. And then she's like, I'm going to go off script here while I read and try to get these tears going.
Okay?
It's so fake. It is so fake.
Well, the former CDC director, Robert Redfield, he said something completely different. And the news media is really working overtime to suppress the news of what he said. He said the virus came from the Wuhan lab.
If I was to guess, this virus started transmitting somewhere in September, October in Wuhan.
September, October.
That's my own view. It's an own opinion. I'm allowed to have opinions now. I am of the point of view that I still think the most likely etiology of this pathogen in Wuhan was from a laboratory, escaped. Other people don't believe that. That's fine. Science will eventually figure it out. It's not unusual for respiratory pathogens that are being worked on in a laboratory to infect a laboratory worker.
It is also not unusual for that type of research to be occurring in Wuhan. The city is a widely known center for viral studies in China, including the Wuhan Institute of Virology, which has experimented extensively with bat coronaviruses.
It is a remarkable conversation I feel like we're having here because you are the former CDC director and you were the director at the time this was all happening.
For the first time, the former CDC director is stating publicly that he believes this pandemic started months earlier than we knew, and that it originated not at a wet market, but inside a lab in China.
These are two significant things to say, Dr. Redfield.
And that's not implying any intentionality. You know, it's my opinion, right? But I am a virologist. I have spent my life in virology. I do not believe this somehow came from a bat to a human, and at that moment in time, the virus that came to the human became one of the most infectious viruses that we know in humanity for human-to-human transmission. Normally, when a pathogen goes from a zoonotic to human, it takes a while for it to figure out how to become more and more efficient in human-to-human transmission. I just don't think this makes biological sense.
So in the lab, do you think that that process of becoming more efficient was happening? Is that what you were suggesting?
Yeah, let's just say I have coronavirus that I'm working on. Most of us in the lab, we're trying to grow a virus. We try to help make it grow better and better and better and better and better and better so we can do experiments and figure out about it. That's the way I put it together.
He's talking about a bioweapon there.
He sure is. And Snopes will have to slam him, smear him as a conspiracy theorist. Facebook will have to stamp medical misinformation.
Yeah. Yes.
What are they going to do with this guy?
Well, the WHO today said it came from an animal. So they got to get their story.
Well, I'll tell you how to get to the bottom of it. Special forces need to pick up Dr. Fauci and Bill Gates, take them to Guantanamo Bay, and they should be waterboarded until the two of them tell us what they know about coronavirus. Because they know.
We're in a time of war.
They've never been asked. Fauci's never been asked about his involvement with the Wuhan lab.
NIH funding, that's a fact.
Hey, a lot of people have been wondering, where is Kerry Kinsey?
I think he's on our next. Wait,
Kerry. Kerry's still here with us. He's working on a new program for a new television network that we're going to be launching this summer. And we had a little announcement here from Kerry, just to let you know he's still with us and he's busy.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. America and Britain forced Israel on a collision course with Iran, China, led by Farad. Read chapter 17. It says these three kings, they were inspired by God, Farad. Also in Daniel, the goat that came across from the west, feet not touching land. That means it came across the Pacific Ocean, came at the ram, and it had a horn between its two eyes. It was guided by Farad. And we're here in chapter 12, the angel, Michael, who is Farad, and his angel, the Shia, which is Iran and Syria. They went to war with the dragon, that's the Sunniism, House of Saud, America, Britain, and false Israel. It's all there, brothers and sisters. War is on the horizon. Assalamu alaikum.